So, my name is Andrew Graham, and I have been writing the Australian Wine Review, or Aussie Wine Review, now for 4 years. And this, I suppose, this little video is more about commemorating 4 years of being a blogger, if anything. And also looking back about where I've come from and where I'm going, if anything else. It's actually really interesting now to look back at those original posts, because I just take one look at them and I just go, they're completely shit. Just purely looking from a writing point of view, we look back there and there was pure passion for actually writing and talking about wine, but the whole structure behind it's about the analysis of actually trying to break something down and get something more valid out of it, it just wasn't there. It was just someone who really obviously loved wine, but actually couldn't really express it any sort of way. I think that now, looking back 4 years on, that I'm really quite happy that I started getting into blogging in the first place. It's really interesting, actually. The whole reason why I actually got into started a blog in the very first place was purely somewhere where I could actually keep my tasting notes. Because I'd always written so many tasting notes and going to so many tastings, but I'd never actually thought, okay, how can I catalogue this? How can I actually make it something that I can reference easily? And this sort of seemed like the most practical thing for me to do, was just to put it online. And I mean, that sounds like a really silly thing to sort of be doing, but for me it was just like, hey, this is an easy reference tool. And it sort of built from there. People started to comment, people started sending emails, and suddenly you were like, there's actually some legs in this after all. And I suppose now it's a situation where lots more people have got a wine blog, and you sort of see that there's almost like a proliferation of people who are like, okay, I like wine, I'm interested in wine, it doesn't really matter if I'm an expert or not. I just want to sort of share my love for talking about wine. And I think that's really quite, look, it makes me happy to see some more people getting into it. And I'd really like to see it even more widespread than it currently is. Because, I mean, even now you sort of see that blogs are sort of seen as almost like a dirty word. And many in the more traditional wine media, even now, can't quite accept it, that it's actually a valid medium for people expressing what they think about wine. But even then, I mean, I look now and I see how many great people out there who are really doing really smart stuff and really expressing themselves very well on wine blogs and online in general. And I think that, yeah, it's in a pretty good state of play, if anything else. So I suppose the other question then is, what keeps you going? And it's something actually I've answered that question a few times now, about how you can manage to actually fit everything in, how you can sort of keep dedicated to start doing it all the time. Because to actually sit there at night and to go, okay, I've done all my work for the day, what am I going to do? I'm going to sit down and effectively write purely for me. And I think that's what the biggest joy about it all is, that otherwise the rest of the time you can write about wine for anything else. But this was more, I mean, it's quite self-indulgent to say so, but this was just purely writing for me. It was just expressing whatever I thought, my own opinions. And I think that's what really comes you back, what brings you back, because you're sort of like, okay, I've got these, I suppose as anyone who's got a strong opinion about something, they want to try and express it. And this was things that I'd see all day anyway, working in the wine industry. So it was like, yeah, it's an outlet. And the more you can start to sort of view it as an outlet and a sort of a part of your day, the more and more you realise that it's not only valuable, but it's almost quintessential. It's sort of like, this is what I really feel, this is what I really think, this is what I want to try and express. I guess the biggest challenge for me is just trying to fit everything in. Like so many other people in the world, you sort of think, okay, it's blogging, it's not actually something you're getting paid for, it's something you're purely doing just for the joy. And I think that's also like quite a bit of stumbling block for some people too, because they're like, why do you do this? There's no money in it. There's so many hours. I mean, one single post that might look like something that someone read in a short amount of time can take me 2 or 3 hours. And you're like, why would you do that on a daily basis? And that all ultimately just comes down to the fact that you get into this routine of, you're like, this is what I do. This is what I feel I want to do. And I think that when you can start to do that, it actually can be quite cathartic at the same time too. Particularly when you're talking about big issues or something that's really quite troubling you in the wine industry. I think one of the most interesting sort of thoughts about that was when I wrote a post last year about Dry July. And it was just something that I found quite a contradictory statement in many ways, about the boom-bust cycle of what people were believing about how you should have this dry July and then followed by a wet August. And it was that sort of thing that actually made me really quite happy that you could manage to articulate and express that whole idea about what I thought about this big issue and have a medium to do it. And I think that if any ways, I mean, that sounds like a quite cliche sort of thing to say that you might be making a difference, but at least from a self-indulgent point of view, it worked for me. And I guess it's that sort of thing that really keeps you going. That and the fact that you get to taste a great amount of wine, I've travelled all over the world because of it. It's a pretty addictive sort of life in many ways for someone who loves wine. And that's really is what the whole joy of this whole blogging caper is all about.